Beneath the Willow Tree. In a small village nestled between rolling hills and endless fields of lavender, there lived a quiet girl named Alara. She spent her days sketching by the riverside, beneath an old willow tree whose branches swayed like whispers in the wind. The villagers called her a dreamer, lost in a world only she could see. One summer afternoon, a stranger arrived, Luca, a young man from the city with a notebook full of poems and a past he rarely spoke of. He was visiting his grandmother for the season, trying to find peace after a heartbreak that had left him weary of love. Their first meeting was serendipitous. Alara was drawing the willow tree when Luca stumbled upon her favorite spot. They exchanged polite smiles, then words, then secrets, slowly unraveling the silence between them. Days turned into weeks. Luca would read his poems aloud while Alara sketched the emotions on his face. They shared stories under golden sunsets, laughter in the rain, and silences that felt more intimate than any touch. For the first time in years, Luca felt understood. And Alara, for the first time, felt seen. One evening, under a sky splashed with stars, Luca held Alara's hand and whispered, "I think I've been writing about you long before we ever met. But love is rarely without trials." As autumn approached, Luca received news that he had been offered a publishing deal back in the city. It was his dream come true, but it meant leaving Alara behind. Torn between love and ambition, he asked her to come with him. Alara hesitated. Her roots were in the village, in the willow tree, in her quiet world of sketches. But more than that, she was afraid that the city would change them, afraid that what they had might not survive. So, they parted ways with tears in their eyes and a promise on their lips, if we're meant to be, we'll find our way back to each other. Years passed. Alara's drawings were displayed in galleries across the country. Luca's books climbed bestseller lists. Yet every story he wrote, every face she sketched, carried echoes of each other. Then, one spring morning, Alara returned to the willow tree. Her fingers trembled as she touched the bark, memories flooding her. And there, waiting with a worn notebook and an even older smile, was Luca. "I came back," he said simply. "So did I," she whispered. "No more questions. No more fears. Just two souls, beneath the same willow tree, beginning again." The Whispering Forest. Once upon a time, in a quiet village nestled between the mountains and the sea, there lived a young girl named Alara. She was known for her curiosity, her wild brown curls, and her love for old stories. Her grandmother used to tell her tales of the Whispering Forest, a mystical place where trees murmured secrets, and ancient magic still lingered in the air. No one in the village dared to enter the forest. They believed it was cursed, haunted by spirits of the past. But Alara didn't believe in curses. She believed in discovery. And so, on the morning of her 16th birthday, she packed a small bag, tied a silver pendant around her neck, a gift from her grandmother, and stepped into the forest. The moment she crossed the boundary of trees, the air changed. It became thicker, almost humming with life. The trees were tall, their leaves a deep emerald green, and the forest floor was carpeted with soft moss and glowing blue flowers. Alara walked carefully, her eyes wide with wonder. After hours of wandering, she came upon a clearing where a single tree stood, massive, ancient, and unlike any she had ever seen. Its bark shimmered faintly, and its roots curled into the earth like sleeping serpents. As she approached, a voice echoed in her mind, soft and melodic. "Child of the silver light," it said, "why have you come?" Alara's heart pounded, but she answered bravely, "I seek the truth behind the stories." The tree was silent for a moment. Then, with a creak of its mighty branches, it opened a doorway in its trunk. Without hesitation, Alara stepped through and found herself in another realm, a world of golden skies, floating islands, and creatures made of starlight. There, she met the guardians of the forest, beings who had protected the balance of nature for centuries. They told her that the forest whispered to those who listened, and that she had been chosen to become a guardian herself. The silver pendant she wore was not just a trinket, it was a key, passed down through generations to the one who would restore harmony to both worlds. Alara trained with the guardians, learning the ancient language of trees, the rhythm of rivers, and the song of the wind. Years passed in what felt like days. When she finally returned to her village, she was no longer a curious girl, but a wise young woman with eyes that sparkled like stardust. The Whispering Forest was no longer feared. With Alara as its protector, it became a place of healing and wonder, where stories were not just told, they were lived. And though the world changed, one thing remained the same. Every night, as the moon rose, the forest whispered, and its secrets lived on in the hearts of those who dared to listen. When the leaves fell. It started in the golden hush of autumn, when the leaves had just begun their slow descent from the trees, fluttering like memories from a forgotten dream. Emily was an artist who had just moved to a quiet town by the lake, searching for peace after the chaos of the city. She rented a small, ivy-covered cottage and spent her days painting landscapes and sipping coffee by the window. Across the lake, in an old house filled with books and echoes, lived Daniel, a writer with a quiet soul and tired eyes. He had lived there for years, ever since the world had taken too much from him, his parents, his brother, and a love he had once thought would last forever. He had retreated into solitude, writing novels that nobody read and letters he never sent. One morning, Emily decided to paint the lake from a different angle. She wandered onto a trail that led her close to Daniel's home. He was sitting outside, a typewriter in his lap, looking lost in a storm of thoughts. Their eyes met, just a glance, but something passed between them. Not love, not yet. Just the faint, familiar tug of something waiting to be remembered. Days turned into weeks. They began to see each other more often. Sometimes it was a nod. Other times, a few polite words. But slowly, gently, like the changing of seasons, their connection deepened. Emily brought Daniel a sketch of the lake. He, in turn, gave her a poem he had written about the wind through the trees. Their silence became comfortable, like a song without words. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand declarations, no wild, desperate kisses in the rain. Instead, there were long walks at dusk, shared glances that lingered a second too long, and stories told under the stars. They learned each other's scars without asking about them, and healed them with quiet understanding. One evening, as the first snow began to fall, Daniel took Emily's hand and said, "You make the world feel new again." She looked at him, eyes shining, and whispered, "You make it feel like home." Years passed. They grew older, but never apart. Her paintings filled the cottage, and his words filled the spaces in between. They never married, never needed to. Their love was not bound by paper or promises, but by the life they built, quiet, enduring, and real. And even when the leaves began to fall again, and again, and again, they knew, some seasons return not to end, but to begin anew.